Every time. And we're live. My glasses are foggy. Nicole's laughing.
I know, my
Welcome.
face went red already.
Yeah. For anybody not watching, you just get to listen to us today. Welcome back again to the How Do We Get Here Health podcast. It is December 28th, 2024. And Nicole and I's favorite thing to do is make resolutions about recording podcasts. So we're going to try and get back into this again. I apologize for being absent. And like, it's not Nicole, it's me. It's you can just play Taylor Swift in the background.
But
It's me.
like,
Hi.
okay, I'm going to stop you because you're putting this out there on a podcast. First off, first thing, you have small children.
I
It's
do.
the same thing I say to every client. Look, what I do is totally different. My youngest is 11. She's almost my height, and I'm not that short. I'm 5'6". Like, she's a giant. My oldest is going to be 17 in March. Like, and I'm trying to say that more because I need to like choke that down.
You're like, damn.
Like, I have an almost adult human that I created.
That's crazy
Anyway,
to me.
but so that's number one. Number two, I work with you, so I know exactly what you're doing.
I know.
And
I know you know.
You're doing massive things. So
Nicole and I both work for Macros Inc. And I don't think we've actually ever talked about that before on the podcast. So Nicole and I both work for Macros Inc. Nicole is one of our lead coaches. She does an amazing job at both working with her clients and working with a team of coaches to help make sure that they're doing a great job. And I was a director of coaching. I can say that now. That's really weird.
yeah.
I was a director of coaching at Macros Inc. So I oversaw a team of our lead coaches, helped with mentoring, and then I also do all of our tech stuff at Macros Inc. And I'm officially transitioning into that role as of January 1st. But I'm super excited about that. What that has meant over the last 3 months, though, is Macros Inc. recently released a food tracking app that I was largely responsible for designing and building outside of the coding aspect of it. And anybody who's listening that has ever dealt with technology or launched an app or done anything that's client facing or public facing knows how much work goes into it. So I have been nonstop with our food tracking app design and implementation, bug fixing, and getting it released. But we are officially launched, which is really cool. So if you want to check it out, I'm totally shilling myself right now. You should check out. It's called Macro Sync. Just search it up on the Apple Store. Eventually, we'll have it for Android. But it has been a metric boatload of work to get
Pretty.
there. But it
That's
looks
the
really
only
good.
feedback I have. It's pretty.
Thank you. I worked really hard on that. So yeah, like life's just been super hectic for me. And as much as we talk about, everybody's got the same 24 hours, that's not true. We all have different commitments, and I have had no bandwidth to put towards this. But we're back, and now we're back.
I know.
From
Like,
outer space.
my bandwidth does not include avoiding humans that are below the knee. Like, that's all I'm saying.
What did you say?
Humans that are below the knee.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
my bandwidth does not include that.
Yeah.
Therefore, I am definitely a step up.
Yeah, as you can
on
see in
the
my background
amount of
here. Yeah, we've transitioned my 2.5-year-old to a toddler bed, which is also chaos. And yeah, it's been nuts around here. But the kids are good, and everybody's healthy and happy. Finally, we got the Christmas icks out of the way. I took vacation for the first time, and everybody's sick, but they're better now. I got sick, but I'm better now, and so we're recording today.
Yeah.
So, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to everybody who's listening, all that fun stuff. I think we're going to talk about New Year's resolutions.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So I actually want to tell you guys a story, and I think Nicole's heard the story before, but I tried a lot to like lose weight multiple different ways throughout the years. And in 2012, for my birthday's in September, I decided September 28th, I'm going to start on my health and fitness goals, and then it didn't stick. And then October 28th, that was the same thing. I'm going to start on my health and fitness goals. It didn't stick. November 28th came around, same thing. I kept on using the 20th. I don't know why. I didn't want it to be the first of the month. I didn't want it to be anything like that. I was just going to start on the 28th. Finally, December 28th comes around, and I'm like, I will not be a New Year's resolution. I will not be a New Year's resolution. And just to be clear, I'm not crapping on that at all. I did not want to be a New Year's resolution. So December 28th, I got a secondhand copy of P90X. I put in my first workout at like 5 o'clock in the morning, did about 8 minutes of it, died. And but But that was how I started my journey. I was a December 28th, and it's ironic we're recording the podcast today, and I'm also kind of setting out on my health goals as of 2 days ago. Again, that I am pretty much I'm a non-resolutioner resolutioner. Um,
I like
so
it.
yeah, for me, the 28th is actually a really significant day because I also quit smoking on December 28th, 2013.
Oh,
Um, I've
didn't
been
know that.
yeah, I've been cigarette free for, oh man, 11 years now, which is really cool. But I think there's some misconceptions around resolutions, and I think there's some ways that people can set themselves up for success over the longer haul if you are choosing to use the 31st, the first, kind of the New Year's resolutions as your pact to get healthy. And I think that's what we're gonna discuss today. So I know Nicole's been talking about a lot with her clients.
Yeah, well, and I've gotten some of them have gotten my video on like why I said I am not a New Year's like I don't like the New Year's resolution, but I'm in the same boat. Like my journey couldn't start on the first. I had to start it on the third. And I don't know why, but my brain said we can't start on August 1st because that will set us up for failure. I don't know why. But August 3rd was in 2012 was when mine started.
I
But
didn't know
my
yours
thing,
was in. I didn't know yours was in 2012. Ironic that we both started in 2012.
I oh, I know. I've already made those
I
connections.
didn't even
And
know
that
that,
also
huh?
goes with the circles and the 23. I'm not gonna go there. Like, that's gonna take this down a whole
Yeah, we'll
different
go. We're
route.
not going there.
I'm not gonna do it.
uh,
But so the whole thing, like for me, over the course of the years, like I had always done New Year's resolutions and I always failed them. And it always got in my head. And it was like this start, fail, start, fail, start, fail, start, fail. But it wasn't fail, re strategize, pick it back up. It was like full fail, wait till next year, start again. So what I ended up started doing was, for me personally, I started reading some of these different books that like they kind of give you a little bit more compassion with goal setting. And I liked the ones that talked about choosing one word or choosing a phrase and saying, this is like a character trait or a value or just something I want to be true when people think about me. And so for last year, I also like to make them kind of like interesting to say. So last year I was rocking steady, and that was my way for consistency. So literally, like everything I was doing, it was I'm rocking steady. So no matter what, the boat's probably shaking like crazy, which has definitely been my life. But I was rocking steady. And so for me, what that meant was literally I was consistent in the things that mattered to me. And I got to set that up, and I've shared it a couple times with my clients and just other people on social media. I like using it's called Habit, and it's on Apple. I don't think it's on Android, which has gotten me some loving special words from some people like you had to choose something Apple only. Sorry, not bad. But so I was actually just looking at it literally before this call. And my whole goal for everything that I was choosing to rock steady on was an 80% or better. Like that was it. And it literally 120 grams of protein, two vegetables. Some days it was a carrot and a string bean.
yeah,
Like it
yeah.
still counted. But then it was like water, read my Bible, exercise, K steps. They were things that I knew I could do on my worst of days. And that's why I put them in that way. Cause I'm like, what if I'm sick? What if the whole house goes down? What if this? What if that? I want to be able to hold steady through the whole year, no matter what. And I am happy to say I got over 80% on all of them except one, which is, I don't even want to say that because I know people that are going to listen and they're going to be like, told you so. But it's sleep, which is why I got the Aura ring. I got a 45% my
You know what
sleep.
though? How many categories did you have?
I'll just say it right outside. So I did read the Bible, protein, eat veggies, drink water, sleep early, exercise, and walk 10K. So 7.
So you did 6 out of 7.
Yes.
Let's do the
And I was
math,
over
Nicole.
80%.
Hold on. I just got to swipe because I'm a peasant when it comes to using my phone. That is still, what's 6 out of 7? That's 85%. You're still 80.
Oh,
You're actually technically still above 80%.
But yeah, so like that was my big thing. Like I had three of them because I've been doing it for a little while. So I know like I have a couple areas. So I did rock steady. And then I did another one, which was a really, really big one for me, leave margin. So my leave margin, just because I have four kids, I have four dogs, I have two cats. Like I manage, I
You have a
work full
zoo.
time. Yes. Except they like I have a circus and they all are my monkeys. But my big thing was leave margin. I wanted to be that person that at any given moment a friend could message and say, "Hey, you got a minute?" And I could always answer yes or no. I actually can catch up with you a little bit later though, because I have a scheduled appointment right now. And that was my really big thing because there were so many years where I felt like I jam packed our schedule to the point that we couldn't breathe.
Yeah.
That it was chaos. Everybody was always tired. Nobody was enjoying like family fun because it was always smashed into a million things. And I always felt like the fear of missing out was all over the place. So this year it was leave margin. So, one, I could say yes at any time, but that meant I had to practice saying no 90% of the time.
Interesting.
So I had to get really, really good and just be like, nah, I'm sorry, man. I can't make that happen. I can do this for you, but I can't do that. And so it was a cool year on like practicing the no's and the yeses and really saying, like, what do I want to actually invest my time in? And the really cool part was like, as many times as people were like, "Hey, you got a minute?" Yeah, sure. What you got?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that was such like a fulfilling moment because I got to say that so often, and then I got to rest more. I didn't sleep, but I rested.
That's funny. I get that though. I mean, I get that aspect of things, and I think you and I are both people that tend to take on more than we can chew in some situations at the expense of ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's a hard place to live in because we constantly are burning the candle on both ends, so to speak. And then it's a struggle to rein that back in because once you've started saying yes, it's really difficult to claw that back in because people expect you to say yes at any given time to any given ask. And I mean, I've seen that from a work standpoint of working with you where you've pulled back on things where you're just like, I just don't have the bandwidth to be able to do that right now.
Yep.
It's not, it's just no, sorry, right? And I've had to do the
Well,
same thing in a lot of situations myself where I'm just like, no, I can't right now. It's
I
just
was
something
gonna
on to
say
my plate that I, yeah,
that goes to the conversation we had right before you hit start.
yeah, yeah. No, I mean, it really is something that takes a lot of practice, and I know that from a coaching standpoint, I see a lot of clients who are people pleasers. And I mean, given most of the clients I've worked with are women, I know that you're the same. Most women, and I'm saying this very general, like
Yeah.
in a general statement, just to be clear, a lot of women fall into that people pleasing aspect of not wanting to say no or wanting to take on everything so they're not disappointing anybody. But ultimately,
Yeah.
we tend to sacrifice ourselves for those types of in those types of situations. And right before this conversation started, Nicole and I were talking just before we actually hit record. We were talking about like what my coaching has looked like over the last kind of 3.5 months, and one of the main things that I've been working on with my coach is essentially stress management and getting to a place where my expectations and reality are more aligned with my work, with my family life, with all of those things, so that I'm not living in this like constantly stressed out state. And a lot of what we worked on was actually setting boundaries, actually saying no to things that you couldn't take on or asking for help when you needed it instead of trying to just figure it out on your own, bringing people in that could do that part of the work for you, delegating those types of things that goes both around our house and with my workload. And like I've gotten to a place over the last 3 or 4 months where I basically live with very, very little stress outside of at least work related. And then like family wise, there's always stress and stuff like that. You know, making sure the kids are good, making sure my wife's good, making sure our relationship's good, all that stuff. There's always stress with that type of stuff. But like work wise, I pretty much just live at a 0 out of 3 on the stress scale. And, you know, 3 being the most stressed I've ever been and 0 being pretty relaxed and getting through each of my days as best that I can. And it's been really, really helpful to allow me to have that bandwidth to actually start addressing my health goals again and putting myself in a place where I'm the priority in my life again. You know, I only get one life, everybody listening, you only get one life, and it's hard to live in a state where you're constantly stressed, constantly run down, constantly overdoing it, and feeling burnt out to the point where you can't take steps for self-care. And those steps are going to look different for everybody, of course. But, kind of coming back into the New Year's resolution aspect of this, I think that, and talking about what you're kind of touching on, Nicole, is if you're kind of coming into the New Year's and you're setting health goals, that's totally fine. I think it's actually a good time to use it as a reset, whether it's the 1st, the 28th, the 3rd, whatever that might be for you in terms of the date and the timing. One of the biggest things that I see with people and would encourage you to look at as somebody who's listening to this is, how do I actually set realistic goals that are going to set me up for success over the long haul? What am I going to do, not just for the first 4 weeks of January, but after that? How do I address my shortcomings when they occur? How do I not lean into my own inherent perfectionism? How do I find strategies for when things can't be perfect? And I like your leaving margins and rock and steady ideology, because one of the things that I'm working on implementing and have really adopted over the last kind of 3 months is essentially no more 0 days. And
Nice.
what I mean by that is, there are some days when my success is going to the gym, getting 10,000 steps, tracking every bit of food that I've had, and being in a deficit towards my fat loss goals. And that's a great day. That's what my 100% actually looks like when I have the full bandwidth to make that. And there are some days when my success and my no more zero, my this is not a 0 day, is I got up from my working desk right here and I walked over to my walking desk and I walked for 10 minutes, or even 2 minutes or 5 minutes, or I did some squats. I got up and did squats right behind where I'm sitting right now, and I ate a carrot and a green bean, right? Like, that's what no more 0 days actually looks like for me.
Nice.
And it's about not being tied to an ideology that is, I have to do XYZ all the time in order to find success, because that's not realistic. You're not going to have the same bandwidth every single day. There's going to be times when, yeah, you do nail everything down. You get all your steps, you get your workout in, you are a great parent, you spend all the time with your kids, you still go to the gym, you track all your food. And those days are actually really rare compared to all of the in-between days where you just need to accept something as a win. And that's where I've been working with my own clients, I should say clients, my client, to find success with, is, what is one thing you can do in the next 30 seconds that takes you from a 0 day of I'm not making progress towards whatever my goal is, to this was something towards my goal. Maybe it's literally, like I said, you walked over your treadmill and turned it on and walked for 30 seconds. Maybe it's you get out the front door and to the end of your driveway and decide that that was enough and you go home. But it's genuinely accepting those things as wins when life is chaotic and you can't do what you deem to be your normal 100%, because that's just not
Oh,
realistic.
yeah. Well, and I think that honestly, like for me, the rock and steady, how I set it up was like I actually sat down and tried to coach myself. That was a fun time. Literally, like
Like, that
voices in
guy
my head.
that guy runs a loose ship, okay?
Well, and like I joke with my clients all the time. I was like, listen, you see this, you see the coach, right? What you don't see is the toddler in the middle of the Target floor, like kicking and screaming, going like this for the
Yeah.
goldfish from their sticky hand that was just wiping on the floor, and they want to put it in their mouth. Like, yeah, that's what's inside here. So, like, think about that conversation.
Yeah.
It was fun. But a lot of this, like when I was setting things up, I said to myself, I'm like, all right, I need to have a way to track this that I'm actually going to do. Because there's been a lot of times I bought like 10 planners in a year, didn't use a damn one of them, and then sat there looking at the dust collecting on them at the end, not wanting to throw them away because maybe I'll use them this year. And I had to get like really real with myself. Like, how am I going to actually do this? I've used that app before and I knew that it was a little bit easier for me, especially with working remote, working online, tracking things, social media. I'm on my phone. Like, I'm not gonna, why fight it? But my big thing was that 80% because I would have told myself, no, be 90, 95 even. Like, and I was like, no. First off, C's get degrees. Like, let's reel this back.
Yeah, that's true. I
Um,
never thought about it that way.
But I said, I was like 80%. I can handle 80%. 80/20 makes sense. Like it's a number we use all the time. And so I said 80%, and I just did the math. That meant on 73 days throughout the entire year, I could miss my 10K walking goal. I could miss eating 120 grams of protein. I could miss eating the 2 vegetables because sometimes we just didn't have any in the actual refrigerator
Wait.
to even do the 1-in-1.
Does one pea and one cube of carrot out of like a bag of frozen
Yes.
vegetables count? Oh, that's a
Yep,
good
it
idea. I
did.
should do that. I had
Yes.
8 servings.
See? See? But that's just it, is like it was giving myself that cushion where you've seen me. I can put down 300 grams of green beans when I have to. It's actually become choice. I would love to say that it's not. I think I got Stockholm syndrome from prep, but that's a whole other thing. I actually like them now. It's weird. But
Green beans?
that's yes.
Oh, see, I like green beans if they're like sautéed in garlic butter, but then they're not. Then they're
Well,
very
everything
calorific.
sauteed in garlic butter is good. But that's
uh,
just it, is like, so I kind of went with that whole thought process of like, what can I do on the worst of days? And I'm so glad I did. Because as I was reviewing things, I was like, man, what happened in like the middle? Because you see like a line, like this is how they chart things on the Habit app. That's why I love it.
oh,
I'm a
cool.
visual person. But so you see this line straight through everything. And I'm like, what happened in that point of the year? It was when I got injured from my back hurt
Yeah, yeah.
right before the powerlifting meet. And so almost everything was blank. But then I started looking through and I'm like, huh, I still read my Bible. I still ate my vegetables. I still drank my water. It wasn't a bust because I was injured. And then like I saw another strip and I'm like, oh, that's when the whole house, when all of us were sick. Look, I still did that. I still did that. And so I think it also not only gave me consistency, but at year end, I think I grew a lot more into like my compassion for myself and the fact that like, hey, you are disciplined. You're very disciplined, but you have to remember that discipline is, like you said, like 30 seconds on the walking pad, which I am just standing on right now. That's
I'm
a whole
literally
other
sitting
story.
in a gaming rig that I work from, so I can't say anything. But it is really comfortable. So
I, that's just,
I think there's a lot to be said though about the what's the right way to say this? I think there's a lot to be said though for something that we see in the coaching space very often is a lot of like very textbook recommendations, like get 10,000 steps, eat 130 grams of protein, or 1.8 to 1.2 grams per kilogram of lean body mass. Like we get these very prescriptive
yeah,
recommendations across the industry and in a lot of coaching scenarios that right off the get-go, and even with training, that right off the get-go will have clients and people feeling like they're going to fail, especially if you use more general, even sometimes generalized recommendations can be hard for that. So we use the 1 gram per pound of body weight, if you've heard of that rule for protein. Well, somebody who's carrying a lot more body fat and
mm,
is heavy would struggle to meet those protein targets. I mean, a 5'4", 165-pound woman who's a little bit overweight might struggle to eat 165 grams of protein when her actual needs are probably closer to 100 to 115
yeah.
grams of protein, right, on the actual achievable low end. And even then, if that person's already only eating 40 grams a day and you get them to 80, that's actually a huge win. But if you're setting this target of 165, I'm using this as a really out there example, that person's going to feel like they're failing. If somebody's
Yeah,
going from 2,000 steps a day and you set them a 10,000 step goal because that's what the whole internet tells you to do, that's going to feel like you're failing when you're actually getting a lot of health benefits just getting to 4,000 steps a day. Just literally
yeah.
getting from 2,000 to 4,000 steps a day, just doubling that step count gives you immense health benefits. And then up from
Well,
there to 4,000 to 7,000, same thing.
and
Uh,
not to mention, I just have to throw this in,
no, go
not
for
to
it.
mention the whole thing of we kind of equate pain to
Progress.
progress.
Yeah.
And that's not the case. Like the minute you said 40 grams and I thought of getting to 160, my stomach literally just went, oh
Yeah.
God, force feeding like chicken breast. Like
So,
it made me wince, like, or
yeah.
thinking about like 4K steps and then suddenly doing 10K,
Yeah.
how your legs feel the next day. Like,
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where setting realistic goals in the first place and actually creating these progressions over time is really important, because most of the time what we see with New Year's resolutions is it's January 1st, I'm going to go full hard into it. And don't get me wrong, like there is some validity in that. Some people
Mm-hmm.
thrive off of that type of like switch, that very much like lifestyle flip where they go from not doing anything to only doing it 100%, and that's what keeps them accountable. The problem is that most people don't fall into that camp, and I've seen that more often than not. I've coached between 1,000 and 1,300 clients. I don't actually know the number, but I've coached a lot of clients, and I would say that 95% of people fall into a gradual lifestyle change is much more sustainable and achievable. And that's where we need to step back and go, okay, where am I at now versus where do I need to be in a year from now? But how do I break it down over the next 6 weeks? What can I do in the next 6 weeks? And then after that, what does the next 6 weeks look like after that? And that might be, like I just said, going from I'm not tracking my food at all to I'm just actually tracking what I'm eating and not worried about setting specific
Yeah.
targets and just getting a handle on that. I'm not currently tracking my steps. I'm going to start tracking them and see what I'm getting and not put pressure on
Yeah.
myself to hit a specific goal. I'm not exercising at all to I'm going to do one YouTube workout twice a week for 15 minutes. And those things are really big wins, but a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people will discount those things because a coach, social media, the internet says you need to do, hit your muscle groups twice a week at X number of sets and reps. And when we're sitting thinking about this, if you're somebody that has a family, that has a job, that which is everybody that I know of, well, most people,
Yeah.
at least probably the people listening to this, even just saying those things can already start to feel overwhelming to the point where you're like, why should I even try doing this if I can't do it the way that I think I should? Or the way, yeah,
Right.
that's exactly the way that I think I should be able to do it. And I remember having a conversation with you a very, very long time ago, probably about 2 years ago, about the word should.
Oh.
And and it wasn't something that clicked for me up until a little while ago, truthfully, about the word should and how much pressure we put on ourselves with that word. Well, I should be doing this, I should be doing that. And the best thing that we can practice in those moments where we find ourselves saying, well, I should be doing this, is reframing it to an I'm choosing to do this
Mm-hmm.
because of this. So
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. When I find myself going, well, I went to the gym and I did 3 sets of bench press and 3 sets of one arm rows, and then I left. Before I started practicing this, my initial thought was, you should have done more. You could have done more. Like, you didn't do what's optimal. You should have done
Yeah.
this. Like, I should have done a full workout. But when I started reframing that to, well, I actually chose to do that because that's all I had available for time today, but I still got to the gym, and I actually started accepting that as a win, it became easier to actually do my full workouts.
Yeah.
Because one, I was just getting back into the gym, so doing a full, 20 set per muscle group workout was hard, and I was going to be sore and not feel great and then not want to do it the next day. But
Yeah.
the actual win was just getting to the gym in the first place. So when we start defeating those shoulds and start reframing it to I'm choosing to, it's easier to actually just get back on track, or at least not feel like we're failing, because it's going from I should have done this to I chose to do this because of these reasons. And all of those reasons are going to be different, of course. You're going to have your own reasoning as to why you're doing something. But Nicole and I had this really good conversation a long time ago. I don't think it was recorded, but about the word should. And I didn't really get it until probably 6 or 7 months ago.
Yeah. Well, and it's one of those things that actually I want to say it was in one of those books that like pushed me more towards choosing a word that I wanted to be true about myself, or like a phrase I wanted to be true. I think it actually was one of those books, but it was a whole section on how we could, would, should ourselves into immense pressure and anxiety
Yeah.
when we forget that we get to do these things. And I think that that's one of the biggest pieces is I get to work from home. I get to see my kids when they walk in the door first thing. I get to sometimes wear pajamas from the belly button down and nobody knows, which I have to say, like, okay, when I was 20, I literally put this out. So I am saying I manifested this because when I was 20, I was like, why can't somebody just pay me to work from home in my pajamas? And
And here we are.
here we are.
Took 20 years, but we got there.
But I sit there a lot, and that was even like to get through, like I've been posting things kind of just working through like this season. It's a harder season, especially for my grandma, like my family, because my grandma, who was the matriarch, passed on November 28th, I think in 2018. And so she was the Christmas person.
Yeah.
Like she had a trailer and the entire thing had a Christmas village. So if you think about a trailer, there's not a lot of room. But she like had a Christmas village that wrapped and winded, and the things had higher ups, and it had roads, and it had working lights, and it was massive. And she was just like Christmas to the core. And so for us, like it's kind of a harder one. Like
Yeah.
one of my daughters is even named after her. Like she was the matriarch. So for me, I was doing a lot on like, I'm counting my blessings. Seasonal depression was a little difficult for us. So it really was. It was like I was trying to collect all the things I get to do. I get to run outside because my legs work. Like I am not injured. I can do this. I get to run outside and look at all the Christmas lights because we live in an area that everybody's decorating. I get to go do this. I get to make dinner for my family, which means kind of the one thing that we've said before, like if there's dirty dishes, that's because my family is well fed.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
if there's a messy house, that's because there was a lot of shenanigans that went on to make it that messy. But I think that that's a lot of everything when we're looking at goals and we're looking at resolutions and we're looking at like new year, new me, which I am not opposed to. I actually like that saying because I think we're constantly transforming into something new. We get to have that moment where we can like assess our last year and like what was missing from this last year. What did we feel we wanted more of? What could we have had more of? And what do we want to make a change for in the coming year? And so for me, I've actually already started. Like that's why I said I was like, oh, I've got my funny phrase. I've got the thing I'm going to apply. This year is going to be the year where I'm going to be salty.
I was thinking Summer of George, personally.
But so for us, it was salty. So I was reading the back of like one of these books, and it was like I was looking for a faith devotional, like a 365. I just wanted something that was a one pager because anything more than one page, I cannot commit to. Like I may have read 100 books in a year, but one page, that's it. That's what we've got. And there are probably going to be some days where I'm going to have to catch up like 3 or 4 pages because I forgot. But on the back, it talked about like be the salt, and then it said preserving, seasoning, flavoring, and then all of a sudden I was like, there were so many traditions or family things that I dropped the ball on this year. And for me, I was like, that's it. There it is. That's the New Year's resolution. I'm going to be salty. So I'm going to try to like pull back in some of the traditions that we had from previous years. And then I'm also going, because I was looking up like, what does it mean? Like, what does salt do? And it was like stabilize, binding. And I'm like, this is all going to be about family.
I love
We're
that,
going to work
actually.
on like
I was thinking you're just going to
pulling
be
things
cheeky all the
together.
time.
Well, that's probably going to happen regardless. Now we just have a cool title to
Yeah,
it.
that's awesome.
But yeah, so like, and that my other thing is I'm going to kind of build off of what I did with leaving margin, and I'm going to make a list of like, talk to the kids, like, hey, since we moved here, we haven't really gone out and done things because we were on like a military cycle where we would get someplace, we would settle. And then right before we move, we would do everything in the area that we possibly could because we maybe would never come back there.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, when you're settled in one area, how many times do you hear people be like, that place was like down the road from my house for the last 20 years. I just walked in yesterday.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
so I think we're going to make a list and do one thing a month because that's what I can commit to. One thing a month.
I
Like,
love that.
that's
Yeah.
all I've got.
That's something that we try to do too. I mean, we've got a lot of really cool stuff around us, and with 3 kids and like my wife works from home, I work from home, it's hard sometimes to want to get out and do those things. And that's one thing that we've been trying to do more often is just like take the kids swimming. We've got West Edmonton Mall literally 20 minutes away, and it's like one of the world's largest indoor malls outside of like Mall of America, and they've got like the World Water Park inside there. They've got Galaxyland, which is a indoor amusement park, and like my kids have never been there, and it's expensive, but you go once a month, it can be budgeted in and fit in, you know.
Yeah.
One thing you said that kind of trickled the train of thought for me, and it's something that I was talking about to, I think it was my sister yesterday, is, and this is more like on my lifestyle side of things, is I think over the last year I've seen a lot of my friends be really successful financially and do a lot of stuff that like I haven't been able to do. And that's not to say like we're not doing well financially or anything
Yeah.
like that, but I'm the sole income provider for our house right now. My wife works, but it's very small time comparatively. It helps pay for groceries, that kind of stuff. I found myself kind of getting caught in this comparison trap where I'd be like, oh man, like must be nice that they can do those things. And like one of my friends just bought like an $800,000 Canadian house. It's like $4 US. But he just bought like a three
I'm
quarters of
so,
a million dollar home, and I found myself like getting stuck there for a little bit. And then I reminded myself that like almost all of my friends have a partner that works full time. Their kids are in daycare, and this is not a shot at any of those things. Like sometimes
no.
we just have to do what's necessary. I'm so lucky that I'm going to use your I, and this is the I get to phrase. Like I get to work from home, and while we're a single income household, essentially, I get to be present with my kids all the time. I can
Yep.
walk upstairs at any time during the day and go see my kids. I'm not bound to an out of the house job. Macros Inc. extremely grateful for the flexibility that they offer in our working conditions outside of my regular meetings. I work when I need to work, or rather I can work a few hours in the morning and then take one of my kids to school and then work, and then I can work once the kids go to bed if I so choose to. I don't often do that. I do typically work a 9 to 5 just to keep things a little more structured, but at the end of the day, my kids aren't in daycare. They get this immense quality of experience with me as a dad. They get to see my wife all the time. We get to experience all of this with our kids. And that was when I finally got myself out of that comparison trap, because I stepped back and said, okay, but what do I get to do with my kids?
Yeah.
What do I get to do in my life that my friends potentially don't get to experience? And again, like this is not a shot at anything. Like are doing what
No.
you need to
No.
do as a parent and to provide for your family. And I know that this is a very short term period of our life that I get to spend with my kids that I won't get back, because the time you spend with your kids is like from 0 to 12, and then the time you spend with your kids drastically diminishes. And they've done studies on this. Like the time you spend with
Like
your
I said,
kids drastically,
17.
yeah, drastically diminishes as your kids get older.
Oh,
And I'm so grateful to be able to have that time with my kids and be flexible. And I'll give you a really interesting and funny example. About 2 or 3 weeks ago on a Friday, I usually don't answer phone calls unless I see who's calling and it has the number. But I got this number at like 9:30 in the morning that's calling me, and I'm like, something told me to answer it. So I answer it, and it's my wife crying on the phone. She had
oh,
gone to drop Allie off at school, my 4-year-old for preschool, and she locked my 2-year-old in the van. And it's wintertime. Thankfully, the van was running, but still, right? And so from the time that she called me, and thankfully, like I was a mechanic, so I know how to open vehicles. I'm really not trying to incriminate myself here, but I know how
but
to
yeah.
open a door when I need to. From the time she called me to the time we got my son unlocked and everybody back together, it was 14 minutes, because the school's 3 minutes away. So I fired up the truck, grabbed some tools, drove over to the school, opened the door. Everybody was happy. And if I was working at my old job, which was 45 minutes away from my house, that would have been a different situation. So again, even when we get ourselves caught in the should have, could have, would haves and the comparison trap, and I'll lead this back into health and fitness in a sec, I promise. It's so easy to forget what we do have and what we do get to do, and
Yeah.
what our life looks like right now as a result of the choices that we have, whether those are good or bad, just to be clear. um, and how this relates to New Year's resolutions in fitness is, I do see a lot of people that get caught in that same comparison trap. Obviously, I'm talking finances and lifestyle, but when it comes to their health goals, they see other people who started 5 years ago and they go, "Oh, like, I'm so far away from that. If it's gonna take me 5 years to get there, why should I even start? Oh man, look at this person. It's been 2 weeks and I've not really made progress in my New Year's resolution, but they're down 10 pounds." And the thing is, and
Yeah.
we don't you don't get to see what other people's lifestyle is like. You don't get to see the sacrifices that they might be making that you're not willing to make, and that's okay, to be clear, because your life might be different.
Right.
You don't know what struggles they might be going through. I have seen people who have been massively struggling with eating disorders getting comments on their pages being like, "Oh man, I wish I could be like you." But that
Yeah.
person, because I've coach them or I know them personally, I know that they struggle with disordered eating patterns, and you probably don't actually want to be like them. So it's really easy to get caught up in that comparison trap when it comes to your health and fitness goals as well. And if that's one thing I would say to anybody here, is your journey that you're going on is your own, and the steps that you take to get there might be big, or they might be little
Yeah.
baby steps. It's like golf clapping with your feet, just trying to get to that next step, right? And so don't get caught in that comparison trap of going, well, this person's 2 weeks ahead of me, or they lost 5 pounds in 2 weeks and I'm only down a pound, or I don't feel like I'm making progress, but I can see that they've crushed 25 workouts in the last 30 days and I've only done 4,
Yeah.
because your bandwidth might only allow you to have done that 4, but you're still better off than you were having done nothing the previous month. So it's
Yeah.
really important to not get caught in that comparison trap, or at least remind yourself of what you have that they might not have.
Well, and I can add, like, I took notes because I'm like, that's a good thought. Oh no, that's a good
I
thought
know I
too.
saw you writing stuff
Oh,
down.
hold it. Sometimes, you ever seen the Harry Potter where Dumbledore is like pulling the thought out of his head?
Yeah.
He puts it in the bowl. I was like, where's my bowl? I have so many good thoughts. Anyway, so there's a couple of things, and it's just because I just want to add this in, which I know you're definitely, like, the conversations you and I have had, this is right in line with where you are, like, as well. And I'll throw this out there, like, stay at home moms, first off, you've got the hardest job there is, because there's no checkout, there's no time card, there's no punch. But at the same time, one of the coolest things that I found along my way, which it made me feel so much better, because there's so much guilt that can hit a stay-at-home mom of like, I'm not doing this, I'm not providing. I'm First off, yes you are. Every time you get a snack, you're providing. Every time you're driving somewhere, you're providing. Every time you want to go into the closet and cry and you don't, you're providing. Like, but there was, I think it was like actually the Coupon Mom book, and she straight up said, she goes, if you're ever feeling like low, you should do an invoice. What would it cost for what you do? Like the child care cost if you had to put them in daycare because you had a full-time job. What would be the cost of food to send them to school like that? What would be the cost of the clothes that they'd have to wear? Like, and they did this whole thing. And man, you know what? It made me feel so dang good on that comparison side of things, because we rolled through with 4 kids, his job only, and it was military and it wasn't paid as well. There was a lot of times we weren't living on base. Like, there was just situations where there were some weeks where we were like, do we get a gallon of milk or do we get a loaf of bread? And like, it really came down to that sometimes, because that was our life, and that was, where we were in that moment. We did much better as we moved along, but that was our season, and I stayed home because 4 kids in daycare, like,
You could buy a nice house for that kind of money.
but like, we always calculated it out, and I'm like, any job that I could get that would have been okay military wise, because of the constant moving every 3 to 5 years. And that was, honestly, that was a lot before there was more remote, because remote happened a lot more with COVID. Like,
Yeah.
that was part of it. But so anything I would have found, it would have basically cost the daycare. So it's like, stay home and be with my children or go to work. Like,
Yeah. Yeah,
but
100%.
but that is one of those things. And so, like, I always look at this like every single decision costs something. It gives you something. You are getting something out of it, which you have to constantly remember. Here's the benefit, here's the cost. Like, both things are very valid. And if you focus on one more than the other, that's when you trip yourself up.
Yeah.
And that's kind of one of the things that I've talked about with goal setting with clients is, just remember what you set up. Yeah, it's got this really cool benefit, but there's this really, really big cost. If you kind of scale back the benefit, you can scale back the cost, or you can push it up, you can push it back. Like, you get to choose
Yeah.
where this goes. And kind of like you were saying, like, there might be a day where you can get onto the treadmill for 30 seconds. There's going to be another day where maybe you can go outside, do laps to the point you're at 15K
Yeah.
steps.
Yeah.
But it's always going to be a sliding scale, which is why, like I said, with my rock steady, I put everything that those levels, that 120 protein, that is my baseline. Like I can do that in my sleep. But again, I've been at this since 2012. Like I've been in this for a minute.
Yeah.
Like I actually just sometimes I just don't even try and I'm like, what did I eat today? And I'm going trying to like scale it back. Like, what's it? No, I hit 120 protein
Yeah.
still.
Yeah.
It's just my natural. It's my baseline.
Yeah.
But the only last thing that I want to throw out there, and it was just kind of part of the whole thought process when it comes to resolutions. I have a major thing that I talk about when it comes to comparison, when it comes to everything. There, like that cost and that benefit, it comes down to three things: a timeline, the processes, and the outcome. You only get to choose two. You don't get all three. Getting all
Mm.
three is like show prep. I'm only going to eat a bro diet and my life is going to suck because I missed my husband's birthday party. Not saying that from experience at all, but it is like I've come to the terms of the fact that you only get to choose two of those because if you get sick, you don't get to tell your body, okay, listen, you're only allowed to be sick for 3 days because that's all I've got allotted for you. Then I need to drop back into my calorie deficit, get my 10,000 steps, and I need to get back into the gym.
I love that. I just wrote down a couple things because I had to as well.
I know.
So I want to talk about the three things you said. What was it? You said you can have progress, timeline, and outcome.
Process,
Process.
processes, timeline, or outcome.
Yeah. So when I was a mechanic, we had this saying: you can have fast, cheap, and reliable, but you can't have all three. You can have a car that's fast and cheap, but it's not going to be reliable. You can have a car that's fast and reliable, but it's not going to be cheap. Or you can have a car that's cheap and reliable, but it's not going to be fast. And it's the same thing with our health
I
goals,
like that.
right? So, and kind of relating it to that, you can have your fast outcomes, but
Mhm.
it's not going to be cheap in the sense that it's going to take a high level of effort and it might be reliable, but it's going to be really hard to do that. You can have a reliable process and you can have it be cheap in the sense of it's not going to take a lot of effort, but that means it's going to take a really long time for the outcomes to happen. Or you can have a fast and reliable process, which is going to be very expensive. And what I mean by that is for that something that is going to be fast in terms of your goals coming to life quickly, like the outcomes happening, and
Mhm.
reliable, meaning you are getting to a place where you can also sustain it long term. You're going to have a coach, probably a therapist, probably a nutrition. Like you're going to have a lot of things going into your process that cost
Mhm.
you literally money and time in
Yep.
order to both get results quickly and make it sustainable for the long term so that when you are done doing whatever it is you're doing that gets you the outcome, you're able to keep doing it. And when I was doing some show prep stuff with clients, I would always have my clients prepay for the 3 months post show because that
Yeah.
was when the most work needed to be done. Getting people to show is not actually that difficult, in my opinion. I'm not discounting
Yeah.
people who get like the pro level stuff. I'm not talking about that.
Yeah.
Like
No.
getting people lean is not that difficult. Getting them to really great show and stage is a different ballgame. But getting people lean is not that difficult. But getting people to not rebound to the point where they just say screw it, quit entirely, and just gain most of the weight and more back is the hard part. So when it comes to your results, yeah, like you can control a lot of those things, but if you want it to be reliable and fast, it's going to be really expensive with
Oh
time,
yeah.
investment, effort, literal money when it comes to your coaching, possibly a therapist, all of those things that you need to do to address the things that caused you to struggle with your health in the first place. So that's really interesting that you said that. And then the other thing that you chimed in on that I was talking with a client with earlier this year was the cost benefit of things. So I got on a or not a consult, I got on a call with this client and she was talking about how she really enjoyed golfing with one of her um, family members, but whenever she did go golfing, she would struggle with her health goals. That whole weekend would be a write off for food, and she would just really struggle. And the conversation I asked her, I was just like, listen, the simple question I want to ask you is, are you willing to give up golf with that friend or family member, sorry, where you get to have this really great time. You do actually get some great exercise because they would walk 18 holes, which is like 20,000 plus steps. You're physically active. Sure, you might drink a couple beers and have some tasty chicken fingers that are way overpriced at the concession at the golf course, but are you willing to trade that time and that memory and that bonding with that person for like an extra quarter of a pound of fat loss over the next 2 to 3 weeks? And they were like, fuck, I
Oh,
never even thought about it that way. And I was like, that's the thing, is it does have a cost benefit. The benefit is,
yeah,
sure, you make progress, but you're also getting benefits on the social side of things, because that was something that this person really struggled with, was how do they manage social events and make progress with their health goals at the same time. And sometimes the answer is you just give up progress for a couple of days in order to go out and have the drinks, be with your family,
yeah,
be with your friends. And the benefit is that you don't feel like the only thing you do in your life is count your calories and aim for weight loss.
yes.
The cost is
Well,
that you
and
lose out on some weight loss for a couple of days that you can make back.
yeah. Well, and you see that a lot also in the endurance space with marathon
Yeah.
running and higher, because I think um, half marathon and below, a lot of people can have normal life things involved. It doesn't, there's time on pavement that's required. And when you get to like the marathon level of things, it becomes your life for like a couple of months. And
Yeah.
so with some of my clients who they've done this like year after year, they know the cost.
Yeah.
And they know, hey, if I go out for drinks on Friday, I am going to feel like death as I march through my long run on Saturday. And then when they hit their off season, that's when they contact their friends and they say, "Hey, I'm good to go. Like I'm
Yeah.
done with that. I'm here, there, wherever." And that's actually been some of my clients who did Berlin, Chicago, New York City. That was our very first goal is I want you to get back into your social time.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not changing your calories. I'm keeping you up to where you were because this is possibly a maintenance, possibly go for a run, go meet up with a friend. I don't know what you're doing. Who cares? You've
Yeah.
been so dialed in that you need space to reincorporate life. But that's just it is like those things like show prep and marathon, they're extremes. And that's just it is like when it's another thing on the comparison side. People have to remember like when I started my stuff, I was a stay at home mom doing couch to 5K. I didn't need to follow what a woman who was doing show prep to go walk on the stage in 4 months was doing because that was not my goal. I did not need to compare myself to her. I did not need to do the things she was doing. I could do things the way I needed to, which meant if I needed to go to a play date, that would probably include like kid food all around that I'm going to just pop into my mouth because that was part of like one of my bad habits that I didn't, not necessarily a bad habit because some kid food is actually very tasty, but it was a habit I didn't want.
Yeah. I get it.
But I think that sometimes when people look at other people's journeys, they have this tendency to just say, oh, well, I want to look like her, so I need to do exactly what she's going to do, which that's not the case because we're all different people. We all have different bodies. And if we focus on the fact of like the timeline, the outcome, or the processes, like 2 out of 3, not all of them, we can have a lot more leeway. And not for nothing, if you don't have to take connection out of things, I think everybody has realized on this side of COVID that that is such like a needed piece of who we are. Even I am an introvert saying that. Like it made me like I need to leave my house.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. I get that.
but I do. I think that a lot of this is there's cost and benefit to a lot of different things, but you've really got to just make it your own way. And you have to be real about that. Like those things like a show prep and a marathon, they have a timeline. You're stuck to it. That's an event. Like you don't get to choose that. And the outcome is the only thing that's going to waver. And those processes that's going to get you there. But how you get there and how you show up on like that race day or the show day, like that was on you with your processes. But people don't have to be like that when they're not doing such extreme
Yeah.
things. They can have life. They can be okay with one of the most heartbreaking coaching moments I've had just recently was a woman felt very, very distraught because she had been watching one of the Instagrammers talk about how you need to weigh and track every little piece of every little thing, everything that goes in your mouth. And she was so distraught about, like, I think it was like crackers or something that her daughter wanted to feed her. And she was like so upset about these couple of crackers, and I don't think that people realize like how much they're messing with
Yeah.
when they talk that way.
Yeah.
Like it's not that serious.
Yeah. And I mean, I've posted about that in like our Macros Inc. client group. I think I actually had like a big post about that recently. It was just look at my calendar, probably like a month ago, where I just was like building recipes in your food logging app and weighing every, like whether you weigh your meat raw or cooked, whether you weigh your pasta raw or cooked, like though, or at least logging it that way. Like if you're weighing your meat cooked, then log it with a cooked entry. If you're weighing your
Yeah.
pasta, rice, whatever, like use the entry that matches that. But those aren't the
Yep.
things that are going to make or break your progress unless you are like show lean, losing the last 10, like 5 to 10 pounds, are a very small human that doesn't move very much. Like those things are
Right.
not the make or break for 9% of people. It is the
Right.
snacking, it is the meals out, it is the alcohol, it is all of those other things that actually matter. But like whether you track 2 soda crackers or 14 grams of soda crackers makes zero difference to your
Yeah.
progress over time. And the cost of that is sanity and
Yes.
memories with your kids,
Yeah.
right?
So we made a
Yeah.
custom for, and it's called Daughter's Handful.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
And I think it's like 2 protein, 5 fat, 5 carbs. We
Yeah.
just pick some
Yeah.
numbers, and like literally it changed her entire everything, and the ease of that stress and anxiety caused her weight loss to expedite.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I am not going into the cortisol talk. I am going into the anxiety and mental space
Yes,
talk. Like,
absolutely. No, and I get that. And but that's the reality of things though, is when you get so wound up about those little details that aren't realistic for you and your lifestyle, you lose sight of the big picture stuff that you then stop doing,
yeah,
right? Oh, well, I didn't track these 2 goldfish that my daughter fed me, so I'm just going to say screw it for the rest of the day. That you don't forget about it, but humans tend to see the wins or see the hits and not the misses,
yeah,
right? So we see the 3 times a week that we nailed our calories, but we don't see the 4 days a week that we went out, ate too much, had some alcohol, or like any of those things that contributed to overages. And we go, well, I hit my calories this week. When we take that stress away of doing things so perfectly and go, this is good enough for what I'm after, and I can do good enough consistently,
yeah,
you start to see real progress over time because it's not about the perfection. It's not about weighing every single thing down to the gram. It's not about any of those things. It's about what you can do consistently and how do I have no more 0 days?
yeah.
How do I, what was it, rocket steady or rock and
Rock
steady?
steady.
Rock
Yep.
steady, right? Like, how do I do those things for the next forever?
Yeah.
For the next forever so that I can genuinely experience wins that I believe in? How can I do these things so that I genuinely make progress that I'm okay with? And that's a whole nother topic, is how do we become okay with a quarter of a pound a week versus 2 pounds a week? Like, how do we become okay with those things? But that's part of all of this, is how do we get to good enough consistently? But it is by giving up these mindsets of perfectionism, of doing everything exactly the way that you think you need to, of doing it the way that that Instagram model, whose only job is to be fit on Instagram and train her clients, who's not a
Yeah.
mom of four, who's not a dad with 3 kids and a desk job, who's not
Yep.
doing all of these things just as their only source of income, right? Like, I'm still a coach and
Right.
I'll always be a coach, but my job is not coaching anymore. My job is helping run a coaching business. And that
Yeah.
means I'm at a desk a lot of the time. I'm not as physically active as I used to be when I was a coach only and had a tech job, or technician job as a mechanic. So how do we find good enough in the midst of all the BS that we read? That's where
Yeah.
progress actually lies.
Yep.
And yeah, I
C's
mean,
get degrees.
yeah, C's get degrees. Well, and it's funny, when I was talking with Max, we had Max on a little while ago, and one of Max's biggest things is I would rather have somebody who's a B plus student or a B level student and consistently hits that than somebody who gets A's and then flunks out the rest of the days because they can't
Yep.
do it perfectly. Because that is what actually makes progress. So when you're coming into your New Year's resolutions and setting up these goals, keep that in mind. C's get degrees. What does consistency look like, and how can I push forward over the next 2 weeks, 5 weeks, 12 weeks with things that align with my life? What are the limitations that I face, and how can I overcome those things without it needing to be 30 hours of cardio a week, 5 gym sessions, measuring everything perfectly while my kids are yelling in the background, and how do we overcome that stuff? That's what actually makes these resolutions stick.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and that's just it, is like, I think I didn't intend to put the consistency one and a leaving margin one together. That wasn't the intention, but the two worked so well together. But like I said, I mean, for me, it still wasn't perfect, but I'm okay with that, because then that just leads me into being salty. Like literally,
I like that.
I I pulled back so much on some things that I was like, dang it, okay, I missed the mark on that one. So now this next year, I'm gonna take everything that I learned from this year, and I'm going to keep that going, because it's part of who I am now. Like I've had that whole year to realize, like, I can hit that protein with my eyes closed. Like,
Yeah,
I feel so confident in my capability now that I've seen that all the way through, and not perfect, 80%, like not perfect, but I feel so confident in my capability now that I've done that rock and steady. And then leaving margin, man, that was just such a cup filler. Like, to be able to say yes as often as I could to the people that are like my inner circle
yeah,
people. Like, I literally sat here and I have a do not disturb, but I have my inner circle people where it still shows their stuff.
yeah,
So
same.
literally when they message, I'm like, boom. And they're like, you're so fast. And I'm like, but it was like, that was such a cup filler moment that I found with my like rock and steady the way I was, and my leaving margin, I was no longer pouring from me. I was pouring from overflow.
Yeah,
And that was such a huge thing this last year. And so now that I have overflow, I want to pour back into those traditions. I want to pour back into like my kids and us being together. Like, we used to run together, we used to do different things. So if people have followed me on Instagram, I'm painting everything, because
I saw that.
painting
Yeah,
is, it's like my Zen garden. Like,
I hate painting. We were actually talking about that because I'm painting my house right now too, and I hate it. And it's like literally thanks, I hate it.
dark.
See, we're going the
But
opposite. We're going white because we haven't had like light colors in our house in ages. But anyways, carry on.
yeah. Well, but like, so our big thing, like, I used to, like, my kids would come in and they'd work out with me. Like, I have the little 2 pound, 3 pound, 5 pound weights,
Yeah,
the little like rubber covered ones that if they fell, go, no biggie. Um, but when we moved here, I had to set up everything in the garage. Well, the climate is very different in New Jersey than it was in Southern California.
yeah, yeah. I can imagine just a little
So
bit.
we moved in and I created the one extra space we had, and I made it like a home gym. My son is in there lifting. My daughter, my oldest daughter, who I didn't think had any interest at all, she's come in and she goes, Mom, can you teach me how to do squats? Can you teach me how to do push ups? Can you teach me how to do a pull up? And I'm like,
The real
sure.
question is, did she ask you to teach her how to Dougie?
Okay, well, we already actually went through that. But anyway, that was our COVID thing. Our COVID thing was, we were the family that tested out all the different dances.
Uh,
It was not nice. That's why there's nothing posted, and there's no way to track
uh,
that back. But even like the littlest one came in, and so what I did was I took out like my whiteboard that I had for work, and I was like, no, this will get so much more use. I put it in there. You see Hannah's in there, 11 years old, writing her own workout, and she goes, Mom, how do I progressive overload this? And I was like, oh, you are definitely the child of a trainer. I'm sorry.
That's amazing. I love it. I love it though because, but it's important. And it's funny you say that. I remember it was about a year ago. Probably not. It was in the summer at some point this last year. Bianca and I have been trying to work out together at least once a week. I go to the gym a couple times, and then we work out at home because that's how it just works out best for
Yeah.
us. the gym gets me out of the house, but then working out at home gets us together as a family, and the kids often come out. And I remember I was doing lat pull downs, and then I was like in the middle of doing lat pull downs. Bianca was doing some bench press with dumbbells, and I look over, and my 4-year-old is doing curls, which is hilarious. She's just doing these little 1 pound curls, and my 7-year-old is doing one arm rows, and I started crying because I just realized like how impactful. Like I was literally
It's one of those.
dirty crying. I was like, do I pull
Yep.
that? Impactful our choices as parents are on our kids, and obviously, like that's inherently a
Yes.
thing. Like it's
Oh
obvious
yeah.
at a like a 10,000 foot view, but sometimes you don't see it at a granular level until you are in it with your kids.
Yeah.
And
Cost and benefit.
yeah,
That's one of them.
and that was it. Like I got to watch my kids like doing these exercises, and they weren't just messing around, they're doing it with good form. And like Robin was doing like 8 to 12 reps with like good form, doing 1 arm rows, and she loves doing the monkey bars. So she was like, "What exercises can I do to get better at the monkey bars and
Oh.
gymnastics and stuff like that?" So it was like all pull ups and that kind of stuff. And we started giving them um, injections of testosterone to
Oh
just
yeah.
I'm just
Yeah.
I'm
Of
just
course.
kidding. I'm just
You
kidding.
know.
Obviously, that's the obvious next step. Um, but no, it was yeah 500 pull-ups a week, 500 milligrams of testy, totally good. My name's Hank. All jokes aside, it was just really cool at a granular level to experience my kids wanting to be involved in those types of things, and it's one of the things that's pushed me to continue to want to be a healthier, better dad, and it's helped me continue to build a foundation of what supports my inner goals and my why. And it was just really cool to see. So the last few months have been chaotic for me personally, so I haven't been doing as much as I'm going to say should have been doing, but I was doing what I could.
Yeah.
One of my goals and our family goals, and something that Bianca and I have talked about over the last week I've been off work, is how do we get back to her being able to have that time, because she doesn't as a stay-at-home mom. And this also circles back to the comment you made. Stay-at-home moms absolutely have the hardest job in the world. I don't care what anybody says.
Yeah.
And men out there who might be listening, maybe you are, maybe you aren't, if you're not supporting your stay-at-home mom, shame on you.
Okay.
um because yeah, they have one of the hardest
There's,
jobs in the world.
I know. Or just
Yeah,
like install a punch clock
yeah,
that she gets to check out.
yeah, that, or like let
Just
her sleep in on Saturdays and make them
no.
coffee
Some.
and change your kid's diaper. Did you know
Yeah.
that in the 19 like up to 25 years ago, only 5% of men had ever changed a diaper? That was actually like a very common statistic, which is crazy to me. um
That's insane.
but anyways, like one of the things we talked about was just how can we both get back to taking care of ourselves, prioritizing ourselves, making sure that we're healthy. Because my wife struggles with the exact opposite of me. She struggles to gain weight and maintain her weight. I struggle to lose weight and maintain my lower body weight. And one of those things was making sure that we're exercising together regularly. So one of my New Year's resolutions that has to do with like connection, my connection value with my wife, is getting together and regularly exercising in the garage. Because even if we can only go for half an hour and we have to haul all 3 kids out there and keep the garage clean so there's no dangerous shit that they can grab, because I have a mechanic's garage, that's
Yeah.
what it has to be. So we already got a schedule set in place, and we're going to be working out a few times a week. And I'm still going to go to the gym, but probably only once a week because I still need to get out of the house. But that's one of our like big connections together, is exercising together, because it brings the whole family together literally, and my kids get to see what like how positively it impacts them,
Yeah.
both from a mom and dad having a great connection to them being able to join us if they want to.
Well, that and it's like when you start to like if you take any classes on the perspective of a kid growing up, who they look up to, what they pull from different places, coping mechanisms, and all of these other things. If you look at all of it, the more that kids are exposed to those kind of things, the better off they're gonna be later
Yeah,
on down the road,
yeah,
because it is like everything they see is building the coping mechanism, but it's also about how it's framed,
yes,
because that's like we could definitely side tangent off of just about everything. But one of my things, and this is like another conversation that I've had with clients, is they're afraid of their kids seeing them weigh things. And I said, I want you to go out and I want you to go find some baking books that use grams.
yeah,
And I want you to have like watch a master chef, watch like where the master chef kids are on there and the kids are weighing out
Yeah.
the flour and they're weighing out other things. Normalize some of these things so that way they're not as big. And
Yeah.
then you don't have freakouts about a couple crackers going in your mouth.
Yeah. That's so interesting because we use the kitchen scale a lot in our house. My wife loves baking, so she uses the kitchen scale a lot with the kids already. And I don't weigh my food as much as I used to. And part of that's 12 years of fitness experience, where I can pretty accurately guesstimate most
Right.
things.
Link 120 grams of
Yeah.
protein.
But I've had my kids ask me like, "Hey, what are you doing with that?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm just weighing my food." How come? Well, I just want to know, how much energy is in my food, how much protein I'm getting. And my kids go, "Oh yeah, because protein is good for your
Right.
muscles." I go, "Yeah, exactly. I still want to be a strong dad so I can rock you to sleep." Because my 8-year-old, almost 8-year-old, still asks me to rock her to sleep, and she's 80 freaking pounds and 5 foot. She's almost 5 feet now, which is crazy because she's 8. I don't know where she gets that from. I'm not 6'3".
I have to say, I'll say one thing. So my almost 17-year-old, he's watching some Instagram guy that's crazy with protein.
Yeah.
But he literally told me this one time, he goes, I'm eating protein because there's going to be a day that I have to carry you. I was like, I am not that old.
That's amazing. You're like, wow. Yeah, but that's, and then I say, well, and I also want to know how many carbohydrates are in that, and my 4-year-old goes, carbohydrates give you energy, right? She's very dramatic and expressive, and I love it. And we've navigated those kind of conversations in our house by just being honest first and foremost with our
Yeah.
kids that, hey, like, protein is good for your muscles and your skin and your hair, and carbohydrates give you energy so that you can run and play, and fat keeps you, like, your hormones healthy so that you still grow big and strong, and keeps your nails, your skin, like, it all works together to keep you healthy. And I remember having this conversation with Robin, my 8-year-old, or almost 8-year-old, last, it was a couple weeks ago. She came home from school and they had like a nutritionist or like some nutrition talks at school, and they're talking about how sugar is bad for you and like there's junk food. And
Mm.
we've always just had this like open conversation, same thing, that like no foods are good or bad. If you eat too much chicken and broccoli, you're going to feel like crap because you're going to be getting all the fiber and be bloated and not feel good. And if that's all you ate, you'd still be unhealthy. Just like if all you ate was, pardon me, ice cream, you'd also be unhealthy long term. So that's why, like, yeah, you can have ice cream after your dinner, or sometimes you have ice cream for dinner, or sometimes you don't have ice cream at all. But it's the same reason that sometimes we have chicken nuggets and frickin' mac and cheese for dinner, and sometimes we have stir fry that's full of vegetables and protein and carbs, and sometimes we have McDonald's, sometimes we have pizza. It's all about balance with all this stuff. And that's a
Yeah.
really hard thing to explain to a 4 and 7-year-old. But as the more we've been having those conversations, I've caught myself periodically being like, "Oh, dude, all you've had is junk food today. You need to have some fruit and vegetables." And Robin, my 7-year-old, will go, "Dad, there's no such thing as junk food. It's all about balance." And I'm
Oh,
like, "Yeah, yeah, you're
no.
right. But go eat your fruits. That's what you can have for your snack today."
So the way that we did it, because we had the examples, we were like, well, if you exclude something and you don't get it in, it's like a Pinterest fail. We may have had a couple recipes that we missed a line, like oatmeal cookies without flour.
Oh yeah,
And then they were just like that big, like,
yeah,
sheet pan
yeah,
of
yeah.
God knows what that is now. And
Man.
we also had sugar cookies that were really salt cookies. Um, so we've kind of adjusted that whole thought process, like with the weighing and the ingredients, and like even just looking at like our entire day could be a recipe.
Yeah,
Like, this is a recipe for our body to be fueled really, really well
yeah.
and be able to like take on the world tomorrow, like with the Pinky and the Brain
Oh yeah, yeah,
thing. But like literally, and I'm like, if you miss those veggies, that's like the salt in the sugar cookies. And then my kids were like, oh no,
yeah, yeah.
we're not going there again, mom. And they always remind me of like one icing that it was like I used the wrong sugar. I used the confectioner's sugar
Oh yeah,
instead of regular sugar. And it was like the where you have to like suck it off of the top of your mouth sweet.
yeah,
And you're like, I'm gonna taste that for the next year.
yeah, yeah,
They like to remind me of that one
yeah.
when we talk about these things.
No, that's hilarious. No, but that's exactly it, right? It's just having those open conversations. And I mean, part of our strategy with keeping our kids like neutral around food is we also don't really make anything off limits for the kids. So if they want chocolate, they can just go grab a little bit of it if they want it. Um, if they want to have fruit snacks instead of fruit, like they can do that periodically without issues. And when we present those options to our kids, it's, hey, I know you wanted fruit snacks, but do you want grapes or cucumber with this too?
Yeah.
And one of my kids loves cucumbers, one of my kids loves grapes. So one will pick cucumber, I'll cut some up, and one picks the grapes. So I cut up some grapes because grapes are actually like a really terrifying choking hazard. Um,
They
so
really are.
yeah, it's terrible.
Even for
Yeah,
adults.
literally. Yeah. So it's also in how we present those things, like sometimes my kids will have corn dogs for lunch, but they're eating an apple and some cucumber with it, right? Or a banana. And it's just about how you frame those things. And the more that we as parents can step away from disordered eating patterns where we moralize and villainize and demonize these food things, which is rampant in our space. I mean, look at what happens when you walk through any grocery store checkout. You can look at all the tabloid magazines and it's like, lose 20 pounds in 8 seconds, just cut your leg off, right? Like it's all of those things. Or, the keto diet is what's going to get you there and all carbs are bad. Like if we just step away from those conversations and actually have real conversations with our kids about food not being good or bad, but as a composition of what we do as a whole, makes it easier to parent
Yeah.
and make progress on our own goals
Yeah.
without
Yeah.
those negative connotations.
Well, and
Yeah,
it just keeps things, like I said, like it keeps things more in the benefit when it comes to everything you're doing as parents. Because then they're constantly seeing that in that framed in that beneficial way versus where like some of my stuff comes from. Like my mom, she tried the best she could, but all of her diet knowledge, like her nutrition knowledge, came from diets, from Atkins, Nutrisystem, Weight
yeah,
Watchers, all of those things. And so for a lot of the things I grew up with, me and my brother, it was very tainted with diet rules. And so it is. But I mean, I think the way that we phrase it is going to matter more than what they see.
yeah,
Like they could see me weigh things and I could be like, this is all I get to eat. Like, oh my
yeah,
God, like this is it. What I do, kind of like when your kid falls, like how you react is how they're gonna
yes,
then react.
yep,
I was always that one, like, just hold it, hold
yeah.
your face because they're not crying yet.
No, but
But like,
no, go ahead.
if we have like a good perception on it, and we're just like, oh, cool, okay, so that's this much. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So this is that much. Perfect. Look, check out that plate. Like that looks amazing. I'm gonna feel so good after this. It just puts a whole different perspective
Yeah.
on everything you're doing.
No, you nailed it. And so interestingly, like last night was we've been in between Christmas and New Year's and all that stuff. And yesterday was super hectic. I was out visiting family. My grandfather's 90 years old, so we were at his house. Me and my sister just
Wow.
having coffee with him. It was a super hectic day. We had to run out to Costco, get prescriptions, run to Rona to get some stuff for painting today, and um, we stopped at Little Caesars and got a couple of like their hot and ready pizzas.
Yeah.
And when I got home, I'll get there, I promise. When we got home, I opened the pizzas to give them out and they weren't cut. And I was like, oh man, they did a terrible job at cutting this pizza. Right? That was like the only comment that I made. So I grab our pizza cutter. Ironically, as a mechanic, I have a really nice snap on pizza cutter. It
Okay.
was probably
Okay.
$700, but so I cut the pizza, give it out, and Robin's eating her ham and pineapple pizza, and she goes, they did a terrible job cooking the crust on this pizza. And then Allie goes, they did a terrible job making my pepperoni align like all line because she's very particular. She's like they did a terrible job aligning putting my pepperoni on this pizza, and it all stemmed from the one comment that I made about how terrible of a job they did cutting this pizza. That stems into how we talk about ourselves, as how we talk about our bodies. Like even though I'm actively in a fat loss goal and my kids understand that I sometimes might eat differently from them and it's for my own goals, I never talk about my body negatively in front of them. I never go, oh, I'm so fat. I'm a loser. I'm a terrible person. I don't ever talk about myself that way, even though sometimes I feel that way. I'm a human being, man. We all have
Yeah.
those thoughts. I never talk about my body that way. Bianca never talks negatively about her body in front of my daughters because
Oh yeah.
it sets the precedence of how they talk about themselves. So when Bianca's doing something that's awesome, I'll be like, oh, look how strong you are. You're such a strong mom. And then when my kids are doing all these great things, it's, oh, you're so strong, you're so capable. And I don't know if you've ever heard of like Snoop Dogg's kids CD.
I have
Oh
not.
my god, you need to download it on Apple Music or Spotify, whatever it's called. Just literally Google Snoop Dogg's children's music, and he's got
Okay.
a song called Aspirations, and it's literally a song about how we talk about ourselves. And we used to listen to it on the way to school every day, me and Robin, and it's like, I deserve to feel happy, I deserve to feel
Aw.
loved, but it's Snoop Dogg rapping it, and it's freaking amazing.
Yeah, but
And and so how we talk about these things to ourselves and how we talk to ourselves in the mirror, or potentially that our kids can oversee these things, that's how they talk about themselves, right?
mhm,
So yeah, I struggle with my weight, but I never talk to my kids about that. I talk to them about
yeah,
how strong I am, how about how capable I am, about how my protein helps me get stronger, about how my carbohydrates help me get fitter, about how my exercise makes me a better dad because then I can chase them at the park. And that's how we frame these things in our house, so that we're not creating 8-year olds that want to diet, which is
yeah.
something that I know you've heard as a coach. I've heard as a coach. I
Oh
know
yeah,
that the people that are listening have probably struggled with at some point. And it's tough though. It's tough to manage those things because it all matters, and how we speak matters. So we just try to take such a very positive but also neutral spin on a lot of the things
yeah,
that we talk about in our family when it comes to health, fitness, food, exercise, all those things.
yeah. Same here. I mean, it's just the good, bad, the all of that stuff, that space where you start categorizing and all of those different things, it gets dangerous, and it
It
gets
does.
dangerous real fast
Yep.
because literally you're the very first place that kids create what is good and bad,
Yep.
and then after you it's school. And like it just keeps going because then once they're in school, then it's friends are also helping create that.
Yeah.
And so like literally parents are creating the foundation. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
no, that's such a huge one. But yeah,
Yeah.
no, we're excited to just be inside, and
Yeah.
I've got Hannah with her progressive overload on the whiteboard now.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm
I taught
excited.
her the 2 for 2 rule and she's rolling with it now. So
I love that. Yeah, we gotta clean the garage up a little bit, and my snowblower's all apart because it's winter in Canada, and my snowblower shit the bed. So I gotta clean up this weekend. We're doing garage cleanup tomorrow. No, we're doing garage cleanup I think Monday because we've got another family event tomorrow, which I'm also looking forward to. And then yeah, we're back into full-fledged at-home workouts with the kids, and I'm super excited about that. But this has been a really fun episode so far, and I think that it's gone on long enough. So everybody who's listening
I
to
know,
us,
I was like, oh, maybe
an
we
hour
should
and
two
30
part this
minutes.
one.
Yeah, maybe we will.
Like,
We'll break it into two 45-minute episodes. But for everybody that's listened, thank you so much. I can't guarantee you any kind of regularity with this over the
you
next
know,
little while, but we are going to try and record semi-regularly with absolutely zero commitment to this because
C's get
yeah,
degrees.
C's get degrees, motherfucker. But all jokes aside, thank you all. I hope you have a really wonderful New Year's and Christmas, and we'll get this out as soon as we can. But Nicole, it's always a pleasure, and we will talk again soon. So I will hit
Yeah,
the
no,
stop button shortly.
I know. Can you find the button?
I did. I found the
Where's the
button.
button?
All
Did you
right.
find the button?
I did. I found the
Okay.
button. Bye, everybody.